Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, as widespread criticism of the P5+1 nuclear framework deal with Iran gains momentum, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed that he favors a good diplomatic solution over a military one. He said that he is not trying to kill any deal, but just this bad deal. During an interview on NBC's Meet the Press, Netanyahu called the Lausanne Accord a dream deal for Iran and a nightmare deal for the world. He insisted that it lacks necessary safeguards and will pave the way for the development of nuclear weapons by the hardline Islamic Republic. The Israeli leader argued that the current agreement leaves the preeminent terrorist state of our time with a vast nuclear infrastructure that would likely spark an atomic weapons race throughout the Middle East. In a later statement, Netanyahu cited the brazen declaration from an Iranian general in recent days that Tehran considers the destruction of Israel to be non-negotiable. Netanyahu asked that any final nuclear agreement with the rogue Shiite nation include recognition of Israel's right to exist, and he repeated his call on world powers to demand that Iran stop its threats to annihilate the Jewish state, in addition to its aggression in the region and its sponsorship of terrorism throughout the world.
President Barack Obama rejected Netanyahu's request that Iran recognize Israel's right to exist, calling it a fundamental misjudgment. He added that it is because no one can bank on the nature of Tehran's regime changing that moving forward with the nuclear negotiations is justified. But he later admitted during an interview with National Public Radio that the breakout time for Tehran to acquire nuclear weapons after the expiration of the current deal in about 13 years would be zero. The White House is working hard to counter negative reaction to the agreement, and earlier Obama even singled out Israel's leader during his first post-deal news conference. According to Commentary magazine contributor Seth Mandel, the president adopted an agitated and defensive tone, even though he was ostensibly announcing what he considers to be something of a diplomatic victory. In what Mandel termed to be a remarkably spiteful comment, Obama said that it is no secret that the Israeli Prime Minister and he disagree on whether the United States should move forward with a peaceful resolution to the Iranian issue, publicly implying that Netanyahu prefers a war with Iran. In a far more conciliatory gesture to his other critics in the Middle East, the president invited the heads of the Gulf Cooperation Council, along with the leaders of Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Bahrain, to attend a conference on the matter in Washington this spring. Sunni majority states have been voicing considerable opposition, similar to Israel's, to a deal that would not permanently prevent Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons.
The U.S. Congress was on recess when the Framework Accord was announced, but lawmakers opposed to the agreement are promising to take swift action when they go back to Washington later this month. House Speaker John Boehner had just returned from a 5-day working visit to the Middle East, including a stop in Israel. He immediately issued a statement calling the deal an alarming departure from original goals of the White House, and said that it would be naive to think that Tehran will not use its nuclear program and any easing of economic sanctions to destabilize the region. Bob Corker, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, announced the intention of lawmakers to go ahead with the planned April 14th vote on the bill requiring Obama to submit any final accord to Congress for review. The legislation has received bipartisan support and would prohibit the president from suspending any sanctions on Iran for 60 days, during which time Congress could approve, disapprove, or take no action on the agreement. It would take 67 votes to override Obama's expected veto of that bill.
These latest developments come as a report is emerging that U.S. Vice President Joe Biden recently told a gathering of prominent American Jewish officials that they should look to Israel and not the United States as the ultimate guarantor of their community's long-term safety. According to journalist Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic, Biden made these shocking remarks during a celebration attended by government officials and members of Congress for the Rosh Hashanah Jewish New Year. Biden reportedly recounted meeting Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir when he was a young senator, saying that when the two discussed the 1967 Six-Day War, Meir told him that the Jewish people would defend Israel because their secret weapon, so to speak, was that they have no place else to go. After repeating that story, Biden turned to the Jewish officials and said, "Folks, there is no place else to go, and you understand that in your bones, no matter how hospitable or how consequential, how much engaged or involved you are in the United States, there is only one absolute guarantee, which is the State of Israel." Well, there's been significant backlash to the statements from a serving vice president, indicating that the U.S. government is unable to adequately protect American Jewry and that they should consider emigration to Israel.
The Hamas terror organization, which has vowed to eradicate the Jewish state, is receiving tens of millions of dollars from Iran to rebuild infrastructure damaged during last summer's conflict with Israel. The British Telegraph newspaper is reporting that the funds have been given to the Izzedim al-Qassam military wing of the Palestinian rulers of Gaza for reconstruction of its terror tunnels and the restocking of its weapons arsenals. Tehran is also financially backing the Shiite Houthi rebels in their attempted coup of Yemen and the Shiite militias fighting in Iraq.
Islamic State forces blew up an 80-year-old church in Syria on Easter Sunday. The radical jihadis placed explosives inside of the Church of the Virgin Mary in Tel Nasri, which is in the northeastern province of Al-Hasaka. ISIS is in complete control of the Assyrian village and has been combating Kurdish troops seeking to push them out. The most powerful insurgent group in Syria is also under fire from the United Nations Security Council for its ongoing siege of the Palestinian refugee camp of Yarmouk, just a few kilometers away from President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus.
Members of the tiny Christian minority in the Middle East are beginning to fear for their very existence as they wonder if a Holocaust of their communities has already begun. This is the topic of a new book by Johnny Moore entitled Define ISIS. The author told Fox News that the United Nations has openly declared that the genocide of Christians is underway in the region. Moore spoke of the Islamic State's large-scale murder of Christians in the areas under its control in Iraq and Syria, where the radical Islamists also take hostages, abduct Christian women and little girls for sex slaves and child brides, and burn their churches and homes. He also pointed out that every time ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi makes a public speech, he talks about marching on Rome in a clear reference to his strategy to conquer all Christians everywhere, and that Baghdadi does not believe he's starting a Christian Holocaust, but rather that he's finishing it. According to Moore, the increasing number of arrests and ISIS-related incidents in the United States is clear proof that Muslim extremists pose a major threat to American Christians. He called on the community to apply unrelenting pressure on the U.S. government to do more to combat the surging influence of radical Islam before it is too late.
Christians in Africa are also at extreme risk of Muslim violence. Survivors of the biggest single terror attack on Kenyan soil in 17 years have been describing the horrific bloodbath that occurred when the Islamist al-Shabaab terror group stormed the Garissa University. The terrorists murdered at least 147 people and wounded about 80 others. Students say that the heavily armed gunmen lined up the undergraduates and asked what religion they practiced. Muslim students and staff were immediately freed, while the Christians were executed, many by beheading, while others died when the terrorists hurled grenades and fired their automatic weapons.
The families of Egyptian Coptic Christians beheaded by ISIS in Libya last month were attacked by Muslim extremists as they tried to build a new church in memory of their loved ones. Eyewitnesses reported that after emerging from a local mosque, the angry assailants marched to the community's current church, screaming that they would never allow the construction of another house of Christian worship. Several congregants in the Al-Awar village were injured when the mob threw firebombs, bricks, and rocks at them. The Nile village is about 125 miles from Cairo and was home to 13 out of the 21 Christians beheaded in the ISIS massacre. Several cars were also set on fire, including one belonging to a family member of one of the murdered victims. A few of the Muslim protesters were arrested, but released by local police hours later. The Coptic community makes up about 10% of Egypt's 88 million predominantly Muslim inhabitants and has been persecuted for many years.
130,000 visitors are estimated to have come to the Holy Land to celebrate the Passover and Easter holidays. Pilgrims and local Christians worshiped at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem in a festive mass to mark Jesus' resurrection. The service was led by the Latin Patriarch of the city, Fuad Twal, at what is considered to be one of Christianity's most sacred sites. Minister of Tourism Dr. Uzi Landau said that the government invests significant resources to encourage visitors to celebrate their religious events in the Jewish state, which is unique in its tolerance and acceptance of other faiths here in the region. The country's tourism offices in Jerusalem's Old City, Nazareth, and the arrival halls at Ben Gurion Airport remained open throughout the holidays to offer services and information about special attractions, national parks, tours, and festivals.
A pro-Palestinian demonstration in Vienna quickly turned ugly, with participants chanting "Kill the Jews" and "Free Palestine." The protest was held by soccer fans from Bosnia who were visiting the Austrian city for a sporting event. After unfurling Palestinian flags in the central Stefanplatz square, the enraged Bosnians jumped up and down while making their call to violence. There is a small Jewish community in Bosnia, a country that has strong diplomatic relations with Israel. In fact, the Jewish state sent millions of tons of humanitarian supplies to the Balkan country in May 2014 after record flooding killed thousands of people.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful day in Jerusalem on our rooftop studio. My guest today is Gidon Ariel, the co-founder of Root Source. Gidon, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Gidon, tell our viewers a little about what is Root Source.
Root Source is the first web-based online platform for Jews in Israel to teach Christians worldwide about the source of their faith, the root source of their faith, including the Torah, Israel history, wisdom of the sages, pretty much anything that Christians would want to learn from Jews and Jews would want to teach them. That's what we're happy to share with the members of Root Source.
Well, is this like an online curriculum, or is it a web platform like WebMD where you just ask a question and someone gives you an answer?
Oh, no. This is an interactive where our teachers record their programs of about once a week, about 10 to 15 minute lessons each time, and the students can interact with the teachers either by email or by leaving a message, a comment on the lesson page, or even calling them up, or with Skype if they're interested.
And why do you think Christians are interested in learning from Jews?
This is the $64,000 question, or maybe the $35 million question. I think that over the 2,000 years of Jewish and Christian history, things never really got to where they're supposed to be. But I think in our time, things are really coming, pardon the expression, to an end. And Christians are recognizing where their roots are coming from. Some are recognizing it because of what they're learning. Many are recognizing it just because of feeling. That's what I've heard from so many people, that I feel that I want to connect more to the Jewish people because that's where Jesus comes from. Many people are recognizing that Jesus wasn't a Christian. Jesus was a Jew. And so they want to learn more about the Jewish family. And little by little, there are more and more Jewish people, authentic Jewish people, who are interested and willing to reach out for that hand of interest, that hand of friendship, and shake it as well.
Well, that leaves an interesting point. We see Christians are reaching out to Jews to learn more about the roots of their faith, but you're a religious Jew, you're from Judea and Samaria. Why is it important to you to reach out to Christians?
I think that the Bible has given the Jewish people a mandate that mandate is to spread the knowledge of God around the world. Unfortunately, throughout 2,000 years, we've had this mandate a little bit on the back burner because we've been so busy trying to survive. But now, with God's grace, we have come back to our homeland. We're building a robust country, and we are able now to share our gift that God has given us with the people that He wants us to share. That would be all of the children of the world. And I think that the pro-Israel Christians, I like to call them the philo-Semitic Christians, of which I know that there are millions and millions of, are only too thirsty to learn this. So if somebody wants something, I try to provide it.
This curriculum, is it based on the Old Testament or the Torah as we call it, or does it also delve into the New Testament?
In general, what our point was to give the Christians an idea that the curriculum that is authentic. So we're talking about Jews who learned in yeshivas, in the traditional Jewish studies academies, and just giving them what we know, and so for them to learn about the New Testament, they have plenty of places to learn. But I'm finding that more and more that it is a bit of a give and take. There's no as Jewish wisdom states, I've learned much from my teachers, but most from my students.
You know, it's interesting, we see that Christians are starting to uphold the feasts of Israel, the Feast of Tabernacle, Pentecost, Passover. Is this something that is prevalent in your website? Do you teach about the feast? Do you teach how to follow the feasts?
First of all, they're not the Feast of Israel, they're the Feast of the Lord, as the Bible says. We're so used to them being the Jewish holidays, but that is because the Jews were commanded to follow these holidays in the Bible. But Christians and others who read the book recognize that these are the feasts of the Lord, and those people who want to be close to the Lord try their best to follow them. And absolutely you're right. I'm getting a lot of comments of people who are telling me, please tell me how I should observe these feasts. And it's not easy for me because I'm used to reading in the Jewish law books of how to observe the feasts, how Jews are supposed to observe the feasts. This is new ground for all of us.
Well, one of the things that is commanded of the nations during the feast is to come up to Jerusalem. What is your site doing to promote actually coming and being in the land of Israel?
I think that that's absolutely fascinating, and I think that we can give a call out to the ICEJ, who is really leading the pack of thousands and thousands of Christians who recognize that this is one of the commandments that it says specifically to the nations to come up to the land of Israel during the Feast of Tabernacles. And as you said, we are teaching about the feasts, and we are definitely encouraging people who can to come and visit Israel, especially during the Feast of Tabernacles.
Gideon, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
The message that I have for our viewing audience of Ask the Source is really go to the source. It's important to learn, if you are interested, if you are called in your soul to learn about the source of your religion, that is to go to the source. Root Source is possibly the only place online where you can find people who are interested in sharing with you this wisdom of the sages, the wisdom of the Torah, the wisdom of God, and we're only too happy to share that with you as well.
Thank you, Gideon, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, shining light from Israel.
Many people in this recent conflict have accused Israel of war crimes.
The fighting has raised serious questions about respect for the principles of distinction and proportionality in international humanitarian law.
People don't understand what disproportionate means in in war. I fought in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in the Balkans, various other places in the Middle East. As well as that, I was working in the British Cabinet Office, the Prime Minister's office in London, where I was responsible within the Joint Intelligence Committee for national intelligence estimates on international terrorism and various other Middle Eastern related issues. Forces that I've been responsible for have used similar tactics against human shields, against the kind of use of children to fight that Hamas use. We didn't encounter anything like the kind of opposition from the world media, from politicians, from human rights groups as Israel faced.
The Israeli action is disproportionate.
So far, no Israelis have been killed in the latest round of violence, while on the other side, 89 Palestinians have lost their lives. The imbalance in casualties that we're seeing right now has been replicated in every single round of armed conflict between Israelis and Palestinians over the last 14 years.
The principle of proportionality is a concept in the law of armed conflict, defined in the Geneva Convention. It doesn't relate in any way to you've got 2,000 Palestinians dead and 100 Israelis dead. That doesn't even come into it. If you've got a rocket launcher and there's a group of 10 people around it, or 20 people, whatever it might be, if I hit that rocket launcher, then 20 people might die. If I don't hit it, then the rocket will launch and it will fly towards Israel. Now, it might be knocked out of the sky by Iron Dome, but you can't assume that. You've got to assume it won't be. You've got to assume it's going to go into a schoolroom and kill 30 people, or even 10 people, or 5 people. And therefore, by attacking that, that's proportionate. It's proportionate to the risk that would be presented if you didn't attack it. That's the proportionality principle. Nobody should find it hard to make a choice between what's going on between Israel and the terrorists in Gaza. The Israeli people wish to protect their society, they wish to protect their population. The people in Gaza, the Hamas, wish to use their people as human sacrifices, as human shields, in order to attack and destroy and overcome, and in fact, according to their charter, to annihilate the state of Israel.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
We are here at the backyard of the Christian Embassy, and what you see behind me is our staff packing special Passover boxes for needy families here in Israel. In Israel today, a third of the population is living below the poverty line. In particular, the city of Jerusalem here is hit in a particular way by poverty. So the Christian Embassy is dedicated to meet the needs of the poor people here in this land, in particular during the time of the Passover celebration.
The economic situation in Israel is in general fine, but there's hundreds of thousands of families that both men and women are working and haven't got enough money to buy everything they need. Pesach is one of the two holidays, important holidays in Israel. And that's the reason we see those families, because even help of 2,000 or 200 or 300 shekels mean a lot for them.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem, has had the privilege of working in Israel. And over the years, we've been able to provide assistance for many families at the Passover holiday. Passover is a time of remembering the redemption that God did for His people in bringing them up out of Egypt. And we want to help as many families as possible to be able to celebrate this holiday with joy.
Sadly, we are always in a position where we have to approach other people for help. It is a huge effort for these organizations and people from abroad that are thinking about us. They also have their own countries and people, so to think about others and me is truly something to think for.
This year, we would like to be able to assist 500 or more families to celebrate the Passover holiday with dignity, but we need your help. For a gift of $100, you can help one family with the basic provisions needed for the Passover Seder. For the Ethiopian community, life is difficult in Israel, and especially at the holidays.
Israel, life is very high. Most of the women doesn't work, only the men workers, and most of them are very old, and also they are not very well healthy. This help is very helpful for them, especially for the Passover. They need it.
I have no other words but to thank you for what I have received for the holidays. My kids and I thank you very much, and I thank you for the social worker that arranged for everything which allowed the organization to come. Because of your help, I will have a good holiday. Thank you for everything. I wish a happy Pesach to you and to your families. Thank you.
The fact that Christians like you show their love and support of the Jewish people by sending gifts at the Passover holiday truly touches hearts, and it makes a difference. So please visit our website today and give, and ensure another family will be able to celebrate the holiday with joy.
The message what we want to bring to the Jewish people during this week is that there are Christians all around the world which stand at the side of the nation of Israel during this very important holiday season, the Passover holiday. It's a gift from millions of Christians around the world to the Jewish people, and I want to thank you for making that possible, to bring this blessing at this very important season during the year here in the land of Israel.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.